Hi, I'm Liz with the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and today I'm going to show you how to make the hands-free diaper bag. It's actually a wipes bag, so it gives you easy access to your wipes. There's a pocket for your wipes pack and a pocket for your diapers. So this hands-free diaper bag is going to be fun and easy and can be worn like a fanny pack. Let's get started. So to get started making this bag, we're going to need a little bit of interfacing. We're also going to need a lining and an exterior fabric. We're going to need two 14-inch zippers. We're going to use some of this 1.5-inch strapping. We're going to use a 1/2-inch set of magnetic snaps to make that flap. I've used this buckle, and I've got some small scissors and some larger scissors and a long ruler. And with that, we're ready to get started. Okay, the cutting is very easy for this project. It's all rectangles. So we're going to need two 12 by 9-inch rectangles of the exterior fabric and two 12 by 9-inch rectangles of the lining fabric. You'll also need two 12 by 9-inch rectangles of the interfacing, and you'll want to go ahead and fuse that to the wrong side of your exterior fabric. You'll do the same using one of the 12 by 6.5. This will be our pocket, and then our flap is 6 inches by 4.5. So you need exterior, interior, and the interfacing, and go ahead and fuse that to the wrong side of your exterior fabric on all those pieces. Once you've done this, we're going to start by building the pocket and the flap. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to set the flap aside for a minute, and we're going to start with this pocket. So the interior piece, the lining is going to hold over here for a minute. We need to make some marks on this piece. So what I've done is started by folding this in half to find the center, and then I've drawn a light line using my favorite marking tool. I use a pencil. I used a darker pen for this. This is all going to be on the inside, so it doesn't matter what tool you use. Maybe you don't use a Sharpie, you don't want it bleeding to the front, but whatever marking tool you like, use that. Then what we're going to do is from that center mark, we mark over, I'm going to line that line up on my ruler. I need 1.5 inches. I'm going to draw a line here, and you can see I did that on both sides. So 1.5 away from this line, and then I need 1 inch down from the top. So I lay my ruler along the top, and I drew a line here to connect those two. Then I'm going to go down 2.5 inches, which is conveniently the size of this ruler. And you can see it's 3 inches there. I'm going to finish this rectangle. And then I rounded the curves just a little bit with my pen. They're not going to be perfect. That's okay. But we're going to round the corners, and then we want these markings. So 1.5 on either side gives us a 3-inch by 2.5-inch opening that's 1 inch down from the top. Now, we found that this is not going to fit every single wipes container, so you may want to experiment a little bit with yours, but I'll show you that I've actually used an oval opening in the wipes container, and it still works through this hole just fine. So don't worry about that part so much. Just make sure that this is going to fit what you usually use. Next, we're going to be cutting this out, but before we do, we need to actually sew along this line, including the rounded corners. So to do that, we're first going to lay these right sides together. And then we're going to stitch all the way around that round opening. I've got one started, but I want to show you how we go around the corners. All right, and I'm using today a zipper foot for just about everything because I don't always love to change my feet back and forth, and the zipper foot I'm going to need for those zippers later and a couple of smaller seams, so I'm just going to get used to it using it on all the seams. So I'm just going along the lines because I don't need to be a 1/4 inch away from anything necessarily on these. I'm going to be stitching on my drawn lines, so it also makes using the zipper foot nice and easy. I'm just going to line up the needle, and then I can take off. Okay, I'm gonna go slow around the corner. So I'm gonna come right up to there, and then I'm gonna actually pick this up and pivot just a little bit and take a stitch. Pivot just a little bit, take a stitch. And I've just got my needle down in the fabric. And I find it takes about 3, maybe 4 stitches to get around. And then I can just come down this nice straight edge. And I like to start on a straight edge, so you can see I'll finish on the straight edge as well. And that's all we need to do there. Okay. That's all we need to do. So then I'll trim these threads. All right, so now that I've cut my threads, what I'm going to do is cut out the inside of this box. So again, I can kind of fold it, and we're going to get through all the layers. So I'm going to take a little bite out of it, and then I can come through here and cut to the place. I want to leave about a 1/4 inch seam around there. It does not have to be perfect. It's just to kind of remove bulk. And you don't have to curve around the curves, but you can. You do you. We're going to cut the inside of this square out and away. Toss that aside for future Liz to worry about. Now we want to get the curves to curve nicely. So what we are going to do is come in here and clip. So I want to put the scissors up to but not across the threads and just kind of snip 3, 4, or 5 times around the curve. And that will help when we fold this through. So do that around all 4 corners. And then we're going to do the magic of this pocket. So I'm just going to clip that so it's going to remove some bulk. What I'm going to do is take the lining, kind of fold it all up, wad it up, and shove it right through there. And now we have this nice finished edge on this little pocket hole. So it's a little rough and rumpled, that's fine. We're going to kind of pull back on the lining on the straight edges and give it a little bit of a finger press. So you can see that we've got that seam right there on the edge. Now that's not going to work as easy in the corners, but just do your 4 straight edges first. So you can kind of pull it away and match it up again to where it's going to go, and a little bit of finger pressing, so that's pulling your fingernail or the pad of your finger, in my case my thumb, across there a couple times. It makes a weird sound sometimes, that's okay, no big deal. If it's kind of a fingernails on the chalkboard thing for you, don't do it. You can get a roller, you can just use the pad of your finger. I find that my fingernail gives me a nice sharp crease. Now I still have rumpled corners, not a big deal. What I'm going to do is grab the 2 pieces I've already finger pressed, pretty close to the corner, and I'm just going to kind of wiggle waggle it, and it will smooth down, and then I can kind of give it a little press, and it's much better. So we'll do that around all 4 corners, and just kind of press that down. Once you've done that all the way around, then I want you to come back and top stitch. So you can see it. I've used a black thread so it blends in on my exterior. You can see here, it's not going to be super flat. You can see I've got a little bit of crimpling. That's fine. It's not going to be a big deal. And I'm just going to follow around close to the edge. And I like to use a thread that's going to blend in, but you can also use one that's going to stand out. You do you. Make it yours. Once we've got this to this stage, we're actually going to set it aside for a minute. So now we're going to make the flap for this pocket. We want to do this with the 2 pieces that are 4.5 by 6 inches. So I have a lining rectangle, and I have my exterior fabric that has my interfacing already fused on per the manufacturer's instructions. Then I'm going to add these magnetic snaps to the lining of this pocket. So let me show you how we do that. So we have all these little pieces, and there are 2 snaps in this pile and a bunch of washers, and those are going to be super helpful for us in a couple ways. So we have this piece that has the plastic attached. In this particular package is the female end, and then we have the male end of the snap, and they will snap together. And that plastic is really handy while we are still putting these together, because otherwise they are a pain to take apart. So don't take the plastic off yet. Good story. Okay, pro tip. Now, what you want to do as you're putting this in is first mark where these are going to go. So what I want you to do is on the wrong side of the lining fabric, we are going to mark, again using whatever is your favorite tool, 3/4 inches in. So I have 3/4 inches and 3/4 inches. Now you could go as far as 1 inch, but it's a little trickier. So I'm going to put a little mark here at the corner of my ruler. And then what I need to do is take this washer, and I'm going to center it with that circle over that mark. So you can just see it. There's my mark. Now where the prongs go could not matter, or it could matter a little bit. I found that when I was sewing then this around the edge, I didn't want the prong sticking into my seam, because that made it harder for my foot to get around. It's another reason the zipper foot is handy. But what I'm going to do is kind of turn this washer so that the prongs will end up going away from these little pieces, but not into where I'm going to try to sew. Okay, so I'm going to make a little mark here and make a little mark here. Oops. And that's why the marks are really handy, because you can maneuver them around. So you can see I've got 2 lines and my dot. I'm going to do that on both sides. So that's going to look a little something like this. So now I can set the washers aside for a moment, and what I'm going to do is use a seam ripper to put a tiny little hole where those are. I don't want to take a big bite with that seam ripper, because then the snap will come right back out. The other thing that I recommend is getting a little scrap of something. So here I've used Peltex because it's extra sturdy. I've used batting or something to give it just a little bit more body at this hole. So you'll need to make the same marks on these little scrap pieces that you did here, and we'll take a seam ripper to all of that. So what do I mean when I say take a seam ripper to it? Well, the seam ripper is essentially a little razor blade, so we're going to take advantage of it in that way this time. This is how Jack the Ripper is our friend. So we're going to take just a couple of threads in the middle of that line, and then we'll be able to rip through it. And makes a tiny little hole in the fabric. We'll do that same thing here. Okay, and then I want to do that same thing on my buffer piece. Now here, this can actually be a larger hole. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to stab it and use the razor blade part in that inside piece to just slice through that whole line. So it's a little hard. We're going to try to get nice and close for you. We're going to stab it and then slice through. Okay, let me show you that one more time. So we're going to poke the seam ripper in. Don't stab yourself. Take just a couple of threads. You can see the little bite I'm taking there. And just slide the razor end through there. You made a little hole. Same thing right here. Just take a couple threads. Oops. Don't want to take too big a bite. Just a little bite. A slice. And then when I do the support piece, I'm going to stab right through the whole thing. And then run the blade. You can almost hear it. Do this side, we'll stab in, and then slice through. Okay. Okay, so now that we've made all the holes, now we can actually start attaching these pieces. So what I'm going to do is take the male end of the snap, and I want it to come from the front side through the two slices we made. So I'm going to kind of wiggle it through those two pieces. You see it pops through there. Now we're going to slide this on here. So there's the snap. Now we'll slide this down over those prongs as well. And sometimes on this piece I've noticed I need to slice it again. That's okay. I'll just slice a little bigger piece on that batting or Peltex or whatever you're using as a support piece. It's more important that you have a tiny opening on the fabric so that it doesn't rip and tear, and then a larger opening on the support piece. Okay, so now you can see everything's in place there. Now we're going to add a washer. And we know it fits because we used it to mark. And now we need to pull the prongs away and apart. Now, my fingers and thumbs got very tired doing this, so I'm going to show you what I did. You're going to take a table edge, and you're just going to put one prong on and kind of smooth it along. So I'm going to show you with the close-up camera how that looks. Okay, so I've got one prong. I'm going to use the edge of this table, and I'm going to kind of smooth it down with my thumb, and it starts to press it away. I'll do that on the other side, so I'm just going to kind of hold everything in place. And I need to put this side now on the edge of the table and kind of use that corner of the table. Once that's started, it's much easier to use the flat table to press down and those prongs going right into place. So now that I've done that, I'm going to use the edge of the table to kind of press them nice and flat. I want you guys to be able to see that they're pretty close to flat. I might push this one a little further. So they're really nice and close to flat. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. And once I have both snaps done, then we're ready, oh snap, to actually start curving and putting the flap together. So as you can see, I've got both snaps in place. On these snaps, I've placed them so they're going to the corners instead of to the sides. I basically just don't want them to be running into one or the other side. So I want them kind of turned one way or the other. So I'm going to set this aside for a moment, and we are going to curve the corners of our flap. To make them even, we're actually going to draw a line on one side, fold it, and then cut the other side. So you can kind of freehand this. You can use a spool or something small. It's not cutting off very much, but we just want to curve the edges of the flap. So I've done one side. There's no chance I'm going to make the same one on the other side. So what I'm going to do here is fold this like so and just trim both at the same time. Just follow my line. And that way, they're magically even. So now I can put these right sides together. And I'm going to turn this over. And the snaps are not too bulky, so this works great. Make sure it's nice and even. And I'm just going to draw that line here. And I can trim along those drawn lines and just take the little bit of curve off of here as well. So just trim right along the trace lines. Okay, and that's all we're taking off. No big deal. So we're gonna put these right sides together again. You can pin, clip, whatever makes you happy. I'm gonna live dangerously, and I'm just gonna stitch it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave the bottom open, and I'm gonna stitch around the U shape here. There's another place where the zipper foot's super handy because you want a nice close, but not on top of this snap kind of seam. So this is what it'll look like. I'm gonna put this here. And my zipper foot can stitch on either side of the zipper, so I'm going to switch this over. Okay. And we will stitch away. And again, on the curve, we're just going to slow down, kind of pick up and take a couple stitches and just pivot around this corner. And then we can sail down the straight side again. There's a little bulk with the magnet, so you can see I'm getting a bit of a wrinkle. It's gonna work out. I'm just gonna kind of smooth it under the foot and hold this in place. If you're a pinner, you'll be pinning and taking the pins out, and that is awesome. I'd love you to tell me in the comments, do you use pins or do you use the quilt clips? I've found myself using both. I want to know what you use. All right, I'm going to sew right off the end. Trim my threads here. And so we have sewn around this shape, and now we are going to just flip it, and you can clip around these corners again to reduce some of this bulk. So I'm going to show you up to, but not through the stitch line. And I never used to know how far to go. I kind of start and stop where it starts going straight again. And I find that helps everything just lay more smoothly once I flip it. Oh, it doesn't go through. There we go. Okay. So we have that all clipped. Now we're going to, I like to also put my thumb and finger on the snap so it doesn't kind of try to rip anything. And I will smooth that through, and then I can use my finger to help that curve. So let me show you again on this one. I'm going to use my thumb on the back, my finger here. I'm going to flip it through, and I can use my fingernail to kind of push out that curve. Okay, now again, we're not probably going to take this to the iron because we've got the metal snaps, but we are going to smooth it. So we're going to kind of, I use the edge of my finger and my fingernail to kind of press that seam where it wants to go, and then give it just kind of a little press. So I'm going to use all my fingers to make this faster. You can also smooth, you can use a roller. I'm really going to worry about the three sides because we've already used our fingernail to kind of push out the curves. And then again, I just want you to top stitch around the flap. So you can go from the top fabric, or I find it easier to kind of keep my eye on this snap. And then I'm just going to have you top stitch real close to the edge here. So I'll show you going around one corner, and then we'll keep going. And top stitching is great for a couple of things. I used to kind of skip it, but the fact is it kind of seals everything in place. It puts it where it needs to be. And you see I'm pretty close to the edge. Got a thread that's hanging out in there. And I'm right up on, you can kind of almost see the bulk of the snap in there. That's okay. It's not going to hurt. We're just going to round it. Again, we're just pivoting around. Okay. So now you've seen us do that a couple times. That's how we're going to pivot around the snaps. So you'll finish top stitching around the edge. So now our flap is complete. We're going to complete the pocket. So to do that, we want a nice finished edge, but we have a rough edge. So here's the trick. We're going to flip this over so the exterior is face up. And we're going to face this face up. And we want to center this over this. So we're going to fold both in half and give it just a little bit of a finger press. So we find the center of each. And I find that centering the pocket opening is more important than whether the edges are perfect. So I'm just going to give a little finger press on that crease so I know where this is. Okay. Now, this is super easy. We're going to line up that crease all the way down. And we're going to line this up with the top. And that sounds crazy at first. We're basically creating a tiny French seam on the edge of this. So with this right here, we can kind of peel it back and you can see that it is centered. And if you're not happy with that, you can kind of adjust it so it's nice and centered so that when it flips up, it'll be right in the middle. And now we're going to sew really close to the edge, like 1/8 of an inch, right along this rough edge. So again, you can pin that in place. And again, I'm going to take advantage of my zipper foot. I'm going to go ahead and backstitch at the beginning and end for a little extra security. Okay, and we'll take this off, we'll cut threads. And you can see it's right along the edge, just enough to have caught everything. But Liz, it's way too close to the top. I know. Now we're going to fold it down. We're going to really make sure this is nice and smooth. Finger press this. You can, if you really want to, take this to the hot iron real quick. But I'm going to, again, live dangerously. And now I'm going to come in 1/4 inch and make another seam right here. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and backstitch at the front and the back again, the beginning and end. All right, now check this out. We'll cut and trim those threads. And I did go through the lining. You can lift the lining away if you are worried about it. That's so deep in this pocket, I'm never going to see it, so it's not going to bother me, and it just adds extra strength as far as I'm concerned. So you can lift this up and kind of peel it back so that you're just sewing through this and not the lining. It doesn't bother me though. So I'm going to go ahead and sew through all the layers. And now, because that is a nice clean edge, when it folds up, that is also a nice clean edge. And it's very lovely. So it's going to completely close the pocket. And now we know where to put the next snaps. So that is also handy because now it's in place. I don't have to worry about making sure everything matches up. I already know where they're going to go. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and peel this back up towards the top. Give it a nice press so that it's smooth. And now I'm going to peel back the corners and mark where I want the second snap piece to go. So my trick is I'm going to use my pen to mark where this is going to go. Because again, we're going to be putting a snap over it. You're never going to see it. So here's what that looks like. So I've got my pen tip on my snap. I'm going to follow it down. And then that's where I'm going to make a mark. And I can see this. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but I can see where I'm going to put my snap. I'm going to do that on this other side as well. I'm going to pen tip here and follow it down. And this is where the snap needs to go. It'll be easier to see here. I'm going to make a mark. And then just like we did before, I'm going to use a washer, center over that mark, and draw my lines for the prongs. And that's where my snap will go. So once again, we're going to do the same thing to install the snaps on this side, but instead of being on the lining, we're actually on the exterior fabric. So I'm going to peel the lining away on both sides so that I'm not cutting through the lining. And I'm going to do what I did before, taking just a couple of threads and making the holes for the snaps. So we're going to assemble these the exact same way. And then we'll come back and we will add the next step. Okay, so now we have added the snaps to both sides. So this flap will snap closed. And now we're going to add the zipper. So you can see why we waited, is we wanted to add the snaps to the inside so they wouldn't be raw on this lining. But it would have been very difficult indeed had the zipper been on there. So now it's time for the zipper. All we're going to do is fold down and press. You can kind of see my line here, 1/4 inch on both the lining and the exterior. And then we're going to sandwich the zipper in between. So the zipper is 14 inches. This is only a 12-inch project. It's going to hang over both sides. That is awesome. So we just want to kind of line up the end of the zipper with the lining all the way down. And then with the folded over exterior, kind of sandwich that zipper between the two pieces. Now you can also use pins to hold this in place. Some people also swear by using a strip of 1/4 inch adhesive tape. But you're going to slide this in and then we're going to sew, again, the zipper foot is the best. We're going to stitch right along the edge of this and that will hold both sides together and closing the zipper between the interior and the exterior. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'll show you what that looks like on the machine. So you can see I stitched really close to the edge of the fabric and that caught both sides. There's a little piece I didn't quite catch. I went back with a second line of stitching. No big deal. It disappears on the front and our zipper is attached. Now I can open and close that as I like. So that's handy because what I want to do now is stay stitch the ends and trim the edge of the zipper. So this side's easy. We're just going to go over here and we are going to line the needle up right with the edge here. And we're going to go back and forth over the nylon zipper. And that's so when we unzip in this stage, we don't accidentally unzip the zipper head right off the zipper. That would not be fun. So now I can trim this edge even with the fabrics. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. It's only slightly trickier because it's open. So what we're going to do, and you can clip or pin, or you may have gotten the idea I live dangerously, and I'm going to kind of just hold this piece together. Do the same thing to kind of stitch right over this section. So I'm going to get that right under here. You can see my needle's right there where the fabric is, and this section is all lined up, so I know it's going to go okay. And then just back and forth. I'm gonna go about 3 times. No magic reason, just number sounds good to me. Always feels like that's secure. Then I have a lot of threads to clip, but this section is done. So I'm gonna kind of just trim that off. And it's nylon, so it's very easy. So I can just throw those down over here. So I'm gonna take off all the rest of my threads and set this aside, and then we're gonna start assembling the body of the bag. So join me in just a second. So to build the body of the bag, we are gonna use our largest rectangles. Now, they are boxed, and we're gonna do that at the very beginning. So what I've done here on the lining piece is marked 1-inch squares in all 4 corners. So I just literally put my 1 inch here, drew around that, and then we're gonna lane them all up. And it doesn't bother me to cut all 4 layers at once, but if you're nervous about it, just cut 2 layers or even 1 layer at a time. And these do not have to be perfect again. Everything is close, and we're gonna do something great with it, but it does not have to be perfect to be successful. So I'm gonna line these up, and I'm gonna use my scissors to cut all these out, and that's gonna look a little something like this. So I've got all 4 layers. Ta-da! Okay, now we need to add our second zipper. So I'm going to pull these apart into their piles. What I want to do is I want probably to decide that this is the top, so I want all of my directional fabric to kind of face the same way. So that means this is the top, so that all the curves kind of face that way for me. So these are the top. So I'm going to set that with top facing this way, and with the top now facing this way. And with the top, then the zipper. I'm going to start it by facing the same way we did the pocket. So since I'm sometimes visually challenged on this, I want to set this here, make sure my zipper heads are in the same position and my fabric directions match up. So now that I know my pattern on the directional fabrics are lined up, I know this is the top. Set that aside. What I want to do is take the zipper, again, zipper head facing the same way. I'm going to flip it face down against the exterior fabric and line it up with its top edge. And it's going to hang over on both sides. Now, why is it face down? Because when we open it up, we want the zipper to be facing the external fabric. Ask me how I know. I may have done this backwards before a time or two. So, zipper this time is face down. Then we're going to take our lining fabric and we're going to line it up here. And again, if you're a pinner or a clipper, go for it. I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to use my zipper foot in the more traditional way to stitch right down and put this zipper on. So I'll take just a minute here. And then with all my layers all lined up here, I'm just going to go a few inches at a time. And sew that zipper on. And then I will line that zipper up here. And sew that zipper on. Okay, we can sew right off the edge. And then we'll trim our threads. And then the moment of truth. So we're going to peel this open. And we can see that you can almost hang it by the zipper and kind of pull. I like to line these bottom edges up and just kind of gently tug at the zipper to kind of pull that seam. And I want you to go ahead and top stitch right now on that side. So the top stitch, we're going to slide it right back under here. And we're just going to run the zipper. And again, I'm kind of pulling gently away. I'm not tugging it, but gently pulling that away. Okay. So now we've got a nice top stitched edge, nice top stitched edge. And now we're going to align the other side. So to line the other side, we're going to kind of set this aside for a moment. We're going to pull this down. We want the top edge again, right? And now we're going to treat this whole thing as the zipper and put it face down. But we kind of want that to line up, right? So I like to kind of line up these cut edges, kind of shimmy it up so that we're aligned on that edge. And you can kind of see in your corners too. It's going to like adjust so that you have everything lined up on the sides. Okay? So we've got the zipper face down. Now the head is towards me on this other side. And now we're going to lay this lining right sides down. And again, we can kind of maneuver it a little bit until it's in place. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to attach the zipper on this side, and then we're going to top stitch. So do that, and then we'll join me for the next step. Okay, so now that all of our pieces are attached to the zipper, we're going to do the same thing to stay stitch the zipper. Now, I'm going to caution you. Make sure you don't stay stitch with the zipper head on the outside. That's going to not be fun to unpick. So we're going to, again, open this up first, and then pinch this together. We're going to stay stitch here, and we'll stay stitch here, and we'll trim these pieces off. So we're going to trim the ends of the zipper evenish with this box cutout. And take off any extra threads. Okay. All right. So now we have the main body panel. Now the next step is going to be to sew the pocket onto the side. Now we want to kind of line up the zipper heads again, right? And we are going to pull the pocket flap up out of the way. And what I want you to see is we're lining up the bottom edges here and here. And you can kind of pin this in place or hold this in place. And what we're going to do is stitch inside the 1/4 inch. So I've kind of folded so you can see where the 1/4 inch would be. I want to be more like 1/8 of an inch. We're just going to baste this on for right now. That way it doesn't move around when we're sewing the whole bag together. So you can do a longer stitch, or I'm just going to do a regular stitch about 1/8 of an inch so it'll be caught inside the 1/4 inch seam when we get that far. Thread caught, no big deal. You can see it's just barely holding that on, and that's what we're looking for. Okay. All right, so now it's time to attach our pocket to the front of the bag. So I'm going to make sure my zipper is closed because that helps me to line up both zippers. So I know that I want the pocket on this side. I'm also going to fold the lining away because I just want to attach this to the front of the pocket. Okay, now we need to attach the zipper first. So what I'm going to do is lay my ruler along the edge of the bag, and I'm going to line it up with these 2 cut edges on the 1 inch mark. And the zipper is in the way a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of do my best to hold it there. And what I want to do is line up the right side together along that line. Pull the ruler away, and I want to make sure I'm holding that zipper head away because I don't want to try to stitch over that. But now that this is lined up, I'm going to stitch close to the edge of the zipper along the whole zipper. And you can see I'm lining my needle up so it's going to be just on the edge. I don't need to sew super close to the zipper. And I'll sew straight down the edge. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and end. And again, I'm going to hold the zipper head away. The other thing you can do, which I might go ahead and do, is pull the zipper past the foot and then put this back in place. You don't have to worry about the zipper head at all. And back stitch. Okay. Okay, so you can see the stitch line there. And then the pocket is going to fold down and it's attached right there. And it's going to line up now with the bottom of the bag. So you line up the sides and the bottom of the bag, and we are going to baste that in place. So I'm going to start at the zipper and I'm just going to go 1/8 of an inch, just barely grazing it. You can do a longer stitch and take it out later, but what I want to do is go inside what will be the 1/4 inch seam and just tack that together so this whole piece is together. And again, my lining is pulled back out of the way, so I'm just going to the exterior part here. And it doesn't matter if you go all the way off the edge here because we're actually going to cut these corners out as well. So I can just flip around and keep going down the straight edge. Lining up those bottom edges and just basting in place. Now I don't pin in this section at all. You notice I haven't been pinning a lot or at all this whole bag. One of the reasons I don't worry about this bottom edge in particular, or the sides, is that it's just basting in place. And it's gonna move on you. And it's not gonna be perfect. And if I try to pin everything so that it's perfect, I'm just gonna get frustrated with it. And this is something that's supposed to be fun. So we're gonna go ahead and just slide down the edge of this. And again, because it's a nylon zipper, I can sew right over it and just pin that in place, basically. Okay. Now we'll trim threads, and we're going to come back and we're going to flip over, and now we can cut out these squares again. So I'll come in here, and I'm just going to put the tip of my scissors in that corner where I want it to stop, and snip the corners away. And that way I don't create an even bigger corner. And then I'll trim up all my threads. And then what we're going to do is we're going to peel these apart so that our linings are together and our exteriors are together. Now here, we want to make sure that the zipper is open because we're eventually going to turn through the zipper. If the zipper is closed, you can sneak your finger in there and wiggle waggle and use some words to get through that. But what we're going to do is actually just open this about halfway, and we're going to close this about halfway. So when our zipper is about halfway closed, and we're going to put these together. Now, we're not going to sew yet because we want to add our strap. We want to put our strap in on the exterior of the bag so it's not touching the interior of the bag. And again, it's just going to go in as a lining. So what we want to do is pause here and make the strap. So I'm going to set this aside a moment. And we're going to need our buckle and our webbing. So I found one package was generously sized so that it made an easy fanny pack waistband for someone like myself. You can also measure this to any size you like. So if your recipient is slighter of build, then you can make this part smaller. But your first part of your buckle needs to be about 5 inches. So I'm going to measure about 5 inches and slice. Now you can finish this in a lot of ways. I'm going to use a zigzag stitch because that's the easiest one for me. And I'm going to go through this and add the zigzag to both edges. Now this has actually been kind of torched a little, and that's another method. We are going to want to be able to put this through our machine. So I'm going to switch my presser feet and hit the zigzag, and we'll be right back. So on my machine that I'm using now, the Baby Lock Jubilant, I'm going to choose somewhere in here one of the zigzag stitches. I like the look of the number 8, and I want this to be kind of a wider stitch and pretty close together. So I'm going to actually increase this to about a 2 and leave it at a 3.5. So we're going to take a look at what that does here, and we're just going to seal the edge of this. So forwards and then backwards. And what that's going to do is just prevent the webbing from fraying. Oops. Got a little bit of a thread nest. I'm sure that's never happened to anybody else out there. It's okay. Okay. So you can see I've used dark on dark, but you can see that basically a little bit of it wants to fray off the edge, but this stay stitch will prevent it from going past that zigzag. So trim up any of extra threads, and you can do that to both sides, or if you've used one end, you can leave that end. Now we're going to take our buckle, and it has 2 parts. The receiving end is what we are going to thread our zigzag up through and then back down. And that is going to create this part. What we want to do then is stitch this together. Again, just kind of in a binding, basting way. You can create a whole box with an X on this side if you like. I found that just doing another zigzag here is going to work. So I'm going to do a zigzag to hold both pieces together, and then we'll move on to the next part. So we're going to set this buckle side aside now, and we're going to start with the longer piece. This piece is nice. You can make this any length you like. So I'm going to use the whole length because it's adjustable, and that way it fits someone around my size. But if you have someone who's slighter of build, you can cut this down to a smaller length. And we're going to start by attaching this to the slide. So that is this piece, and it has kind of a right and wrong side. We're going to thread this up through the slide and down through the slide, like so. And we want about 2 to 3 inches here. And then what we're going to do is finish this with a zigzag like we did before. And then we're going to fold this back. And then that zigzag will be on the inside. And we're going to make a box with an X. So let me take you through that at the machine. So we're going to start with our zigzag. So again, I'm going to switch over. For me, that's an 8. And I'm going to zigzag up and down here. And when I'm happy with that, I'm going to stop somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to cut my threads. And again, I'm going to trim close but not through those zigzags. And that'll help all that fluff and fray. Okay, so now I'm going to fold that not over the slide, but back behind it. And like I said, I've got about 3 inches there. and I'm going to make a box and an X through the box. So I'm going to go back to a straight stitch again and make a box. And I'm going to just go square all the way around. And you can either back up or spin it all the way around and make your box. Okay, now we need to make the X. So I'm going to point this, and I've got this seam tape, so I'm going to just line that up here. And then I'll pivot and go across the top again. Just adds a little extra security to the top. And then I'm going to spin this around, and again, I'm going to kind of use my seam tape to draw my X. And I'm going to get just a little bit of stitch on that. And then we're good. So one more time, I'm going to trim threads. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record there. But we just want to manage our threads as we're going through so we don't end up with anything catching or nesting. And you can see we've got a nice, clean box. And it's not perfect. It's not going to matter. So we've got this. Now our slide is on. I'm going to now treat this as the right side and this as the wrong side. So I want the right side up, and I'm going to make sure the whole thing is right side up. And then I want this piece to be right side up. So there's a wrong side and a right side. And I want the prongs to face the slide. Then we're going to come up through this piece and thread down through this piece. And we'll slide that a good chunk of the way towards the slide. Making sure not to curl it up. Okay. Then we get to the slide, we want to make sure, again, we're not twisted. Okay. We're going to go through the slide and then through the slide one more time. And that way the slide does all the work of adjusting the strap. So now we can pull that through, and we can check our slide and our buckle are both on the right side, and the wrong side is inside. Did I say side enough times? So right side, and the wrong side's on the inside. Okay, now that we've got this, we're going to kind of fold it up. We want to make sure we know this right side and wrong side. And you're going to decide which side you want the buckle on. I would like to put this about 1/2 inch down from the zipper, and I'm going to baste that in place on the machine. Just a straight stitch along the edge. And again, just like we did adding the whole pocket to this, we just want to keep it in place while we're doing everything else. So, simple basting stitch. Okay. Now, here's the only trick I'm super proud of figuring out. We're going to kind of keep this all folded up, open our little magnetic flap, and tuck this all the way in here. And the magnets will hold it in place so it doesn't get caught up in our seams. It's a lot of bulk, so there we go. So that's going to hold this in place so that we don't end up accidentally stitching our strap to our bag. We're going to go to this other side, and again, the lining is still away, so we're just basting this to the exterior. I'm going to take this piece, and again, right sides together, about 1/2 inch down, and we're going to baste this one in place too. And I really like to baste these in place as opposed to just pinning or clipping them in place, because There's a lot of layers going on, and if this strap moves just a little bit, it's not going to hold on and do its strap job. It's a lot of layers. We're just going to go slow and base that on. Okay. Now we're close. Here comes bag assembly. So I'm just going to also tuck this in to my little magnet flap there and keep that out of the way. Okay, now we're going to fold the exterior pieces together and the lining pieces together. And I'm going to show you a little mark. I'm going to leave about a 5-inch opening somewhere in the middle here. So I'm just going to mark that where I want to stop and start. So I'm going to be able to put my hand in here and turn the bag back around. What we're going to do is line up the sides and sew down the sides, line up the bottoms and sew down the bottoms, leaving this gap on the lining. Then we're going to sew down the sides and the whole bottom, no gap on the exterior. Once we've got all those, we're going to leave these, all these little squares, leave them for later. So we'll start over here, and we're going to do a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. And we're just going to line these up and stitch down. Okay. And I might have even gone closer to 1/2 inch. It's not a problem, just be consistent. And that mark where I want to stop, I'm just going to back up and give it a little bit of back stitch. So right off the edge. And then for the exterior, again, we're going to line them up. I'm going to show you here. We're going to line them up, and we're going to stitch right over the zipper and the strap. So we're going to just kind of make sure that's folded and out of the way. And we're going to take a nice beefy 3/8 inch seam. See, what I want to do is make sure my seam is going to be chunkier than that basting stitch, and that's nice and flat. So I'm going to use my fingers to hold this in place and take a nice beefy 3/8 inch seam. And now I'm going to work, and I'm working just with a couple inches at a time. It's not a race. So right off the edge and around the corner. I'm managing the bulk and then lining up my seams. Manage the bulk, and line up the seam. All right, now this is exactly why you got to tuck everything in, because man, it wants to do its job and face outward. So we're just going to tuck that in, and this is going to be your bulkiest seam because you have 2 layers of the strapping. So just keep your eye on that and go nice and slow over it. So I'm coming up to here. I'm just going to slow down. Okay, almost done. So we've got all of those pieces. Before we turn it inside out, we're going to box all these corners. I'm going to show you how we box the zipper section first. So that's up here because it's not boxing individual corners exactly because you have the zipper that's going to be part of the boxed corner at the top. So here in the bag you can see the zipper is part of that box corner. So I'm going to show you how to do that part. So what we're going to do is reach hand in through our opening. And now what we're going to do is pinch all of this together. So you can see the zippers where everything is held together. So we're going to pinch, and you can open these seams. Like so. And we're going to pinch that together. Again, I'm managing the bolt kind of towards myself so you can see this easier. I would probably do it in my lap so that I can see it easier. But you're going to pinch that, and you're going to nestle the zipper teeth right in against this seam, right there. So you've got an open seam, kind of press it open with your fingers, nestled right up on the zipper teeth. And then you're going to take the lining seam, pinch it outward as well, and line the zipper teeth up with that as well. So you've got an open seam of lining, the zipper, and the open seam of the exterior. You're going to pinch all those little corners together out here. And it takes a little finagling. I'll be honest with you, it takes a little finagling. This is maybe the hardest part, and it's not that hard, it just takes patience. So we're going to just pinch everything nice and open. And then once we've got that all together, all the seams lined up, like so. I believe in me. We can do it. Okay. Now we're going to stitch that same seam width right across there. This is going to be a little hard for you to see. I'm going to try to show you in the camera. But we're going to pull this back and away for the bulk and just stitch over here. Now I never start at the corner because it likes to pull deep into the machine. What I'm going to do is start inside about a 1/4 inch, back stitch out to that corner, and then stitch across here. So let me see if we can show you that. And then I'll do one more so you can see it. So you can see here, I'm lining these all up. And the zipper teeth stick out a little bit, and that's okay. We're lining these all up. And I'm holding the bulk so it doesn't try to use gravity to pull against me. And I'm going to start a little bit inside. Okay, we're going to take about 2 stitches. Then we're going to back stitch out. And then forward stitch in. And we're just going to cross this. And I'm going to back stitch it back. Try to keep my fingers out of the way for you. Stitch off, and back stitch over the zipper teeth a little bit. It just gives it, again, extra strength. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim my threads and trim the zipper teeth just a little bit. So you can see here, I'm just going to neaten that up a little. Make it less bulky when we turn it. Ta-da! Wasn't perfect, but looks pretty good now. All right, so let's show you that with another camera a little bit closer. So what I'm going to do is open the seam, and I'm going to pinch these outward. And then I'm going to use that seam and line it up with the zipper teeth. And then I'm going to pinch the blue part of my lining outward as well. So what I've got out here is going to be the corner box of each side, and out here's going to be the corner box of each side, and I'm going to sandwich the zipper teeth in between. So what you can see is I'm taking the zipper and I'm lining it up with the seam and I'm pinching the corners away, and I'm doing the same thing with these. So we are lining up everything so that the seam and the zipper teeth and the seam all line up, and that will keep us square. And like I said, this part's a little fiddly. It helps to open these seams. That's why I'm going to take the extra seconds to do that. And then we're just pulling these corners away to box them. So they form little angles, that side and this side. And we're just gonna stack them. So we've got zipper tape, and then we're stacking those corners. And then we're gonna stitch a seam line right across there. So I'm gonna take a couple stitches, and back up. And then I'm managing this bulk away and using my fingers to make sure all the seams stay in place. And you can see this is not a perfect little box corner. So I'm gonna kind of pinch it and line it up. And here we go. And then I'll backstitch at the end. So that's our 2 zipper corners, kind of 4 zipper corners. Now we're gonna do these outside corners. So again, I actually find it easier to reach up into the bag to help me. And that's when having that zipper open is super handy, because then I can actually get in here. But you're basically going to pull these apart, and you want the pocket, so you can see the line where we attach the pocket zipper, you want the pocket parts to join that part. So in here, you've got more layers on the external side. So you're going to peel it apart and box the corners with the extra layers of the pocket. You see that? You've got the extra layers of the pocket towards the pocket side. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work that way, but it just makes it that much easier. So pass you that hint. So again, we're going to stack the seams, and we can kind of nest them to where one goes one way and one goes the other way. And then we're just going to stitch across here. We're going to do that on all 4 corners, and then we'll come back and flip the bag out. One more hint as you're doing the second corner, it's helpful to have the seam of the bottom of the bag all facing the same direction. So when you do go to nest those seams, when it's time to nest them, you want to let this whole seam go this way. And so that way it doesn't try to twist on the bottom of the bag. Again, not earth-shattering, but it's a fun tip. So then we're stitch across this side. All the hard parts are done. Now we're going to do the lining pieces. Super easy to peel apart. Almost too easy because they're just a piece of fabric. You'll line them up right at the seams. Nest the seams one direction or the other. Trim your extra threads so they don't get in the way. And then we'll sew across that edge. All right. Okay, we're gonna take just a second and trim all the threads, and then it's time for the magic. All right, we're ready. So I'm gonna reach in through the opening, reach in through the zipper, and actually kind of unzip it all the way open if I can. There it goes. Ha-ha. I'm going to open the magnet flap. You can kind of hear it. And I'm going to grab the strap and pull that through the opening. Ha ha ha. And now we're going to just turn. So I'm using my thumbs to kind of push that through. And we're going to have this big lining, and then we can start using all the things we attached. But we're still going to leave some room. We don't want to necessarily push out the corners of the lining because they're going to go inside the bag. We do want to go ahead and push out all the corners of the bag. There might be a few more threads I missed. That's okay. So at the zipper here, we're pressing out these corners, and you can see the zipper's in there just right in the box corner. And this on this side too. Always check the zipper first. That's the part I get nervous about. Looks good. Looks good. And then this bottom corner, and I'm just kind of making a peace sign with my fingers and pushing out both corners at once. So there we go. And it naturally made this whole pocket in the front. So now we're ready to close the lining. And what we're going to do is just kind of pinch the edges together, and it'll fold in at our seam allowance, and we can just stitch along the side, the bottom. If you want to hand stitch it, you're welcome to. If you want to change your thread to match your lining, you're welcome to. I'm just going to use this black thread I've gotten here and stitch the tiniest little seam, and then trim my threads one more time, and then I can push the lining down into the bag. And again, I'm going to make the peace sign and just push that down into the corners of the lining. And that is the bag. We made it, and it has all the things. So here, this front zipper pocket, I'll take the wipes out of this one so we can show you, fits your package of wipes. And so I actually even have a rounded one, and it works just fine. I'm going to stick that in the pocket. Voila. Zip that away, and then I can actually just kind of maneuver this pocket around so I can get to the wipes. I've got the magnetic closure for that part. I can stick a couple diapers in there. So that is our hands-free diaper bag. You can wear it around your waist, and you're off to the ball game, anywhere you want to go. Enjoy. Thanks for watching this tutorial with the Missouri Star Quilt Company.
Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you aren't already part of the Missouri Star Quilt Company family, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss a thing. And if you click that bell, it'll notify you every time a new tutorial comes out. See you next Friday.